Good evening, and welcome to this week's 66 RPG Think Tank, where we knock around ideas for RPGs. Joining me this week is Patrick, Emily, Mark, and Jay. Josh and Alex are off in a field somewhere, doing sort of exciting LARP stuff, I believe. So this week it's just the four of us. And we're going to be talking a lot about magic and the sort of cultures which have magic and what happens to those cultures and how magic and cultures interact. But before we get onto that, let's do some check-ins. So, Jay, would you like to take us through the check-ins?
Yeah, I will check in first. I've had a productive week. I have a big folder at work in which I put all the post-it notes which I use to manage my, life at work. I write stuff down and stick it on sticky folders, what I'm doing at the moment. So I was able to clear that away, and yeah, it's basically been good. Made progress, not set anything on fire. Mark, how was your week?
Yeah, anything on fire either. Developing our new system, getting that made up and tested and shipped out to Italy, which is shipping on Tuesday. But yeah, generally okay. Trying to get into the whole team leadery and project management thing and not making it feel awkward. So yeah, but overall good, but it's going to be very, very busy. And I've booked a big chunk of next week off to go to music festival.
Nice, very nice indeed. Pat, how was your week?
Pat is very quiet.
I was on the toilet, is he? Well, very well. Emily?
I've had a bit of a strange week. Lots of hospitals, lots of odd fun times there. But I've been doing some more Felton. I've had lots of commissions. And yeah, lots of overtime at work, so very, very busy.
Grand. Okay, while we wait for Pat. Chris?
I've had a good week. Did the convention at Leicester Continuum last weekend. We ran 4 games, got great feedback, everything went well, lots of good reception, lots of good comments about the books and things like that. So that's good weekend. And then this week's been lots of sort of getting stuff ready, so working out the pricing for people who want to upgrade their Kickstarter and actually buy the books when they've only got the PDF and stuff, which turns out to be a bit more complicated because of exchange rates and printing and postage in different countries. It's frustrating. There's lots of variables, but pretty much got that all sorted, and emails will be going out very soon about that. So yeah, good week.
Cool, that sounds good. Out of interest, which games did you run?
We did Mince Pies and Murder, Outbreak, Meddling Kids on Bad Acid, and Demon Strata.
Cool. It's good to hear. Good, grand. Right. I'm assuming Pat isn't back since I can't see his lurking form. So we'll hand back over to you, Chris, for some talk about the culture of magic.
Yes, thank you, Jay. Yeah, this week's brainstorming is about magic, and the big picture is we are going to produce a book called 66 Magic at some point. And I'm sort of toying with ideas of what to do with that, and one of the things I'm thinking about is we give, rather than doing one magical world in sort of like the way Pathfinder or D&D does it, we actually do lots of little variants. So we might have a few paths which are all to do with high-tech techno magic, a few paths which might be to do with really Stone Age magic, primitive magic, and sort of a bit of background, a bit about the culture. And I'm interested in this idea that what does a culture which uses magic look like? Because if you think about your classic D&D culture, it's just medieval culture and then magic stuck on the side. How would a culture form if they had magic right from the beginning? How does it shape the culture? What happens to it? What are they good at magically and what are they bad at magically? And how does it go bad? So it's this sort of big picture at the moment. What does magic do to culture and how does it reflect in that culture? So we put this post out earlier yesterday, and we've got some comments back on that, which I'll come to in a little while. But Jay, I believe you've got an idea for a magical culture.
Yes, this was actually an idea I kind of created a little bit, or the beginnings of it, when we were talking about various monsters that we picked up, and we're looking at one of the early things, 66 think tanks we did, and basically riffing on the idea of a group of people I've essentially called the Sand Elves, and they are essentially magic exists in this world. It's mostly about the transfer of energy from one place to another. But what these elves discovered is that rather than using their own personal mana, they could use the mana of the things that surround them as a way of powering their magic. The net result of this is what was a beautiful, lush forest is now a desert. As
That's
they
interesting.
exploited the environment they had around them and ripped the energy out of it. So climatically, it's still normally what would be a lush desert. There are rivers running through it, and it has rainfall, but there's no life there. It's just dead, apart from the deep underground elven cities. So that's basically the idea I had around it. So this is a culture that's fueled by magic, but because they've completely destroyed their ecosystem, they're very much more conquest and raiding based in their personalities, because they need to raid across the borders of their wasteland in order to get, well, food, anything of worth, because if they can't create it by magic, they're very limited.
Oh, I like that idea because well, I mean, you can obviously take a metaphor for environmental pollution there, and use of limited resources and what happens. And really, the Elven society therefore would be a post-apocalypse society from the Elven point of view. They've had their peak and sucked their local area dry, and have got to go out and raid and plunder.
Yep.
So I like that. So what sort of magic, what would the individual elves be doing?
The original idea I had for this magic system was that magic is something that simply can be taught. It's done through incantations and aspects and a small measure of votives, perhaps, or essentially you need some kind of physical item with some spells. So your power is limited by your intelligence, because spells have increasing complexity based upon what you want it to do. So the more complex the spell, the more simply outright difficult it is for you to do anything with it. So that was the idea I had behind that. So magic is quite prevalent in their culture, but has been ultimately the cause of their destruction.
That's interesting. Yeah, because strike me there, the magic would have to be quite practical for them, or probably quite battlefield type magic, because if they're raiding, that's what they need the magic for. Yeah, that's quite a nice one. You could drop that one in almost any sort of fantasy world, because you could find for a relatively small area.
Yeah, before we move over to Emily's got a ping on this. I did ever think that their particular trick on the battlefield is essentially taking other mages' mana away.
It's going to be an interesting one to try and model in the system. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for that. I'll take this opportunity to say hello to Mark and also Matthew. Mark, first of all. Mark, can you hear us?
I think so. Can you hear me?
I can. Excellent. I'm glad you could join us. You're a little bit fuzzy, but I believe you're on your phone, aren't you?
I am on my phone, yes.
It's wonderful to have you here. Quick briefing of how to take part in the discussions, because you missed the sort of program chat. Is that in the chat window, if you just do a ping in sort of capitals and bold, just to let us know when you've got something to say, then that's a great way of getting involved, and it means we can sort of smoothly move between people. Matthew, are you there? No, we don't appear to have Matthew on sound or anything. Okay. Emily, you've got a ping, so what's your idea about people and their magic?
That was actually me.
Okay, Pat.
I was thinking a culture that had magic. If you see magic as it's often depicted in kind of fantasy as just being a shortcut to kind of things that you could do eventually with technology anyway. if you had a culture which was around the kind of period where Galileo was kind of looking at different planets, they would be able to basically use magic to transport themselves to other places to have a closer look at them. So the idea I had was like essentially a spacefaring species without any real kind of high-tech stuff. Like, they're still fighting with swords and shields, and they're still kind of, they still haven't really figured out that the world isn't flat yet. But they can travel to other planets, and they have a vast kind of intergalactic empire, because when they see a new world, they get a lot of wizards together, they build a big magical portal that goes from one world to the other, and they step through it.
Oh, that's a very interesting thing. They're developing magic at a very particular point of history, effectively, our technological development, and then the magic in that interface and to take it society in a whole new direction.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you were speaking, what the idea occurred to me is maybe magic already existed. Maybe they developed some magic where they could effectively teleport anywhere they could see. Suddenly you've got telescopes and they can see other worlds, and the magic still does exactly the same. So you can have a very limited set of magic which just suddenly opens up everywhere they can travel.
You could have a very interesting kind of culture there where, like, all the technological stuff, the majority of their technological kind of stuff is just built in building bigger, better telescopes. It'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, because obviously in our history, not long after sort of Galileo time, we discovered America. Well, Europe discovered America. A few people already knew it was there, like the people who lived there. But we went there and we plundered it, and that drove our culture forward.
Yeah.
If we could go to other worlds, if there's a similar sort of race to claim those worlds and claim those resources, so yeah, that would be a very interesting angle to take, and a very specific set of magic we could model quite easily in the system. Okay, Emily, I think you think that ping really was you, wasn't it?
Yes, I did have a similar one to Pat, just based on the idea of, well, if you have a world with this magic, why would you develop culture? Because I always think it was a very primitive, tribal-like society, because if you can use magic to make food, use magic to take down, any beasts you need, magic to keep you warm, to keep you cold, you're not really suffering as a culture. So the idea of a very, very primitive society, because they've used magic to get everything they need. So they've not had to develop technology, they've not had to develop fire, for instance, because they can make magic fire. They wouldn't know what to do with sticks and stones, because they have it. So you have a very stunted, uninvolved society, but who use very high-powered magic to do everything for them.
So then that magic is so inherently a part of their culture that they've never needed anything other than magic.
Yeah. And the other idea was kind of the same with that. Of you have a culture that have all the access to magic, but on the other end they have a very advanced culture-wise, because they can live in decadence. They don't have to suffer with having to go out hunting, because they could just magic does it for them.
Yeah, if you say you had a Stone Age society and they suddenly could do, really quite powerful magic, it was really easy in their world to do magic. Yeah, they would just why bother doing that dangerous hunting stuff or that hard work ploughing fields? Yeah, so, click your fingers, everything appears.
So why would you develop medicine when you've got healing magic?
Yeah, the interesting thing is you could make an argument that they would turn into quite a peaceful people because they're not competing for resources, and they'd spend all their time doing art and creativity and living happy lives. Or you could say that it's the other way, actually, because they haven't had that cultural development the way we have, they would just go hell for leather straight away and try to obliterate each other.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that.
Sorry.
Sorry, Pat, go on.
I think I'm assuming with everything that we're writing here, we're assuming that the races we're talking about are people like us. They have the same kind of thing on an inherent level. So, like, people are better at making cultures than we are at fighting each other. So yeah.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, I've got no limits on this. I think actually we could take a society completely different. That idea of M's and say, well, actually that's two completely different paths and do them both.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, you could almost do your classic Star Trek world of it's one continent is one complete distinct personality and another continent another personality and yeah. Okay, Jay, you've got something to say on magic and ignorance?
Yeah, just taking out what Emily was saying there, you can imagine a society that got powerful magic that early in their history. They will be completely ignorant about how anything works because they've never needed to be curious about it to get an effect they've needed. So like just fire here. But by the same token, I imagine while they'll be completely ignorant of science, their understanding of how magic works will be incredible. Because
what they're doing all the time.
You get what you want in their society through magic. So they've been curious about that, but they don't know what rocks are made of, what the sky is, what it is they breathe. None of this stuff they know anything about. So that could be quite interesting. Thinking what you were saying, I could easily imagine we've come up with 3 cultures here. The people who can teleport anywhere as long as they can see it. The elves of a great wasted desert, and Emily's essentially tribesmen, magical tribesmen. You could easily imagine them coexisting on the same world.
Yes, they could. There's no inherent reason why not. I mean, we could easily say that if magic has some sort of maybe it's in the rocks, and so certain parts of the world there's more magic available, or the magic is easier to tap. In the same way that certain resources are easier to tap in places around the world. You could easily have one world where different cultures develop their magics in very different paths. Just thinking about actually the paths in the game, I mean that would be you'd actually end up with quite a lot of paths. It's all quite possibly non-combat paths, lots of artistic and practical paths. You'd have the food creator path, the house builder path. Or the giant holographic display creator path. It would just be all those sorts of quite a weird collection of paths. I think those cultures would have. We had some comments from William Davis when we posted this out on G+ yesterday. And he came up with an interesting idea, an interesting culture, which is a race of amphibian/lizards who are magic using and presumably intelligent. But they're very caste-based, almost like different breeds of lizard have different jobs in their society. A bit like saying Planet of the Apes, how different apes fulfill certain roles. So, and they're sort of that struck me interesting because a couple of things. He's suggesting that what magic you have available is very much limited by the type of creature you are. So if you're a big bulking tank fighting type, you'd have obviously a fighting magic. But if you were sort of a medic creature, you'd have only medic magic available. So you'd have a very tight caste system effectively. But the other thing also I was interested in is about amphibians. What effect does it have on development of culture and magic if people are underwater, if it's a subaquatic or semi-aquatic people? Because obviously things like spell books go completely out the window. So I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts on this impact of water or subaquatic lifestyle might have on magic. Emily, have you got something? Emily, did you think? Sorry.
Oh no, I didn't think. I was just making reference to the lizard amphibians sounded very close to Lizardmen in Warhammer with the cast system.
Oh, does it? I've never played the game. Okay, and Jay?
Yeah, if you can't write anything down, then everything is... Oh, there goes Pat now. I'll be back soon. If you can't write anything down, then everything has to be an oral tradition. So you're talking very classic shamanism, very early characteristics of both. Many of the world's greater religions start off having a period of, say, 300 or 400 years, where literally everything is done through song and dance. So I can imagine that you've got an awful lot of elders teaching young ones, and these are how you wave your hands, and these are the things you speak. So just because they don't have a written tradition doesn't mean they don't have memory. So you'd be seeing a lot of oral traditions. I can easily imagine these are a people who would have quite large rituals. I can imagine them African tribesmen, particularly Amazonian ones. Think races that exist and cultures exist in our history that have no written language. They are able to communicate history through dance and stories. So I would see that kind of would be the weave and the style they would use.
Oh yes, that's interesting. Yeah, so the use of magic is interwoven with how that magic is passed on to different generations. So yeah, that would give you a very interesting culture and a very different set of magic, because it's not going to be very useful in a battlefield, and also possibly even if it's one of these creatures on its own, can it do magic, or does it actually need multiple to do it? So that's interesting. Yeah, I like that. Mark, I think you've got some ideas about 1940s.
Yeah, I wanted to go for something a little bit later on the kind of on the timescale here. So a lot of the magic we focused on so far involves kind of pulling mana out of the surroundings. So the kind of thing I was thinking of here was more magic that relies on calling and binding some kind of outsider spirit. I mean, these can vary from a very large sort of Lovecraftian kind of god to essentially little spirits that can be called up, summoned, bound, and then built into a thing. And I got the idea that this would be a fairly recent development. So over the last 100 years or so, people were able to start doing it. And the thing which really made it possible is, say, advances in mathematics. So I'm getting a little bit laundry here if everyone's played that, the computational demonology. But it's something on those lines. But say this technology has been building up over the last 30 years, going up into the late 40s, then it became quite an integral part of the Second World War and how that was fought. So a lot of things that we could achieve now with a smartphone or with a kind of computer could be achieved with, or a kind of electronic intelligence could be achieved by binding a spirit into something. So it's possible to have more complicated radar by binding a spirit into that. They can see things and can tell you information. And there's all kinds of things like that. And say maybe even the atom bomb is actually, that relies on just binding a huge amount of spirit energy into a small thing and then just releasing it in one massive go. So there is no atom bomb. There's just a spirit bomb that relies on that kind of thing. So I like the idea of having like a 40s sort of tech level and look and a general style to everything. That's what I was thinking. You have another question there, risks, say, because say one of the major risks could be escape. Things that you've bound up can escape. And another, going back to the atom bomb thing, and another one would actually be, since this is the age of mass production, particularly after the war, such a huge number of little computers and things were made, that the spirits have been drawn from are actually getting harder and harder to find. There's simply fewer and fewer of them. We've kind of depleted the total number of things that are out there. We've just hoovered them all up to mass produce these devices.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the moment you sort of explained it, the parallels with the development of atomic bombs and the science. So from the 1900, the very basic ideas of splitting the atom, all the way on to 1940s, getting to the bomb. You could easily parallel that with this your spirit summoning technology. So yeah, that was one. That one's good, especially it would lend itself if you've got these spirits get loose, then you need spirit hunters. So it's an obvious setting involved for the party to come and salvage almost, isn't it?
Yeah. So It kind of sells that kind of thing, and the kind of effect on society is that we stop developing things like computing and all the mathematics behind computing, because we find it's actually, rather than making a computer out of vowels, you can achieve something much, much better just by binding a spirit into a piece of metal, and then lo, you've got a computer which far outstrips what you can do with valves and even later on silicon. So that's how everything kind of diverges really from what we have now. A lot of what we rely on now is information processing. Then we have, in that thing, we have demons.
Mm. Emily, you've got something to say on this?
So actually, me. If you're saying this as not an allegorical kind of post-1940s, but an actual 1940s, as in our world, well, there's two things that came to mind for me very quickly. One is, like, if it's come about very recently, you could say it you sort of became much easier to contact spirits after World War One. And then you might have a bit of a dark undercurrent to your kind of world there, because maybe the spirits aren't as kind of extra normal as you think. You know.
That's nice. That is a really nice idea.
Yeah, that is good. So actually, when you're mining these spirits, you're actually mining the souls of your ancestors and the people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and that'll be an interesting one, because also you could tie things into, say, what you were in life or what you did in life may affect the type of imp or spirit you are or can be used. So maybe you've got a really hideous person, he comes back as a very powerful spirit, and sort of a really meek, nice person comes back as a really sort of useless spirit, or possibly vice versa.
It's kind of an interesting thing, because obviously with technology advances because you wind up in a situation where it can advance. And if you've got something, if in this world magic is based on channeling the spirits of the dead, and then you have an event like World War One, which kills people on a scale that's never been seen before, suddenly those kind of abilities will be much, much easier to do. And you could say that it was a fringe science before World War One, but then suddenly it's become something that's really, really easy to do in the last. Well, if you're in the 1940s, it would be the last kind of 20 years, you know.
Yeah, and something you find as well, if you kind of carry on this kind of theme, this is a time when the world's population is still really, really increasing. So, say during the war, the Second World War, it's quite easy to produce devices, computers to go in Spitfires to improve accuracy, and all kinds of things like that, because of the sheer number of people who are dying. But in the period afterwards, that rate of death dies off, but the population still keeps going up. So it's harder and harder to find things. But also, you get to the point where there simply aren't enough souls available to go into new kids as they're being born. So one of the hints that this is what's happening is you end up with children being born, and there's nothing in them. There's nothing there. It's all birthing lots of vegetable children. It's kind of the first signs that this problem is really kind of coming in. It becomes a major plot point of this is what's happening, and these are the limits of magic.
That is nasty. That's very laundry, actually. That's kind
of. Jay, you've got something on the recently dead.
Yeah, I was thinking along the lines of it's because there have been more people have died than have ever lived. That's a known vague statistic. So you could be very difficult to run out. But if you make it so it's only the more recently dead spirits are available. But also, actually, what Mark was just saying, and Pat is, the idea is not so much the spirits of the dead you're dipping into, but it's kind of, to steal from Final Fantasy VII, it's the life stream. Or it's the mana pool that when you die, you go back, your spirit energy goes back into this. And essentially what humanity's done by tapping into that for their own personal use rather than for the crafting or creation of new souls is, as Mark said, we've basically depleted it, so you have soulless children. Yeah, that doesn't mean they're not walking around and talking. That just means they don't have souls.
Yeah, it raises all sorts of theological questions, doesn't it? And I think that could be very interesting as this technology becomes known and widespread. I mean, what impact does it have on the churches and religions and things like that? One thing about the sort of limiting supply before we went off on sort of Mark's excellent idea, I thought, well, if you had only souls of people who had killed other people, or possibly only people who have died violently, you could call back.
Yeah,
Then,
people in limbo rather than in the afterlife.
yes, or possibly people in hell. Maybe only have people in hell available to you. Then the whole thing about World War One, if it's something died violently, you've got that big glut suddenly appears. But as society becomes more and more peaceful, things actually get worse. Emily?
That was me. It was just something very nasty just triggered in my brain when Jay said people who don't have souls, and that's maybe I know as I said earlier, maybe all these spirits are coming from people, but yeah, maybe people are being born who don't have souls because of the souls aren't being reincarnated. They're being used in machines and things like this. Maybe the souls of something else are coming through in those children. So then you've got kind of monsters for your setting almost, because you might have these people walking around with some kind of inherently alien souls.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's actually very quickly building into actually quite a nice setting because you've got that, you've got those monsters. What are they coming through? And possibly not all of them are monsters. Maybe some of them are friendly. But you've got the party who are either collecting these souls to stop them causing trouble, or salvaging them to recycle them, or maybe hunting them down because all these people who are effectively alien serial killers are turning up. So, yeah, this is a very, very nice setting. Jay?
Yeah, because Pat just said souls of other things being born in the children. Well, essentially what this is putting souls into machinery. So at what point do the computers start talking back?
Yes. The moment you give them a sound card.
The plot, if you're taking entire souls and they can retain some of their memories, and the more powerful the computer you put them in, or the thing you try to build with them, the more likely they are to actually start displaying this kind of stuff. But say that hasn't happened yet. It's something which can happen as it goes on.
Yeah, I mean, that should be an interesting time to sort of set the start of the campaign world. It's just as that's starting to happen and disrupting the society. I've got a feeling we could talk for ages on this one particular setting, but we are running out of time. So we will move on. Thank you, everyone, for those ideas. Thank you, Mark and William, who posted on the G+ post. We will post something out for this week because we'll get on to that in a moment. So that's my agenda. Yes. Next item on the agenda, playtesting and other business. I just threw this in there because not currently doing any playtest sessions, and whether there was any other business we wanted to catch up with for a couple of minutes. So, has anyone actually plans or ideas when they're going to be in a position to do some playtesting sessions?
Yeah. Normally for Hellenic we have all 9 chapters that form the first new legend in some kind of state where they could be playtested. It depends, Chris, whether or not you want us to start playtesting them after you've had a chance to proofread them or not.
I don't have a strong opinion because playtesting tends to things. So it might be, you might want to change stuff, so it's a double work. But then again, if I go through them beforehand, they're more likely to be right the first time or close to what we want the first time through. So either way, I mean, what do you feel, for your work commitments and development process? What suits you?
I don't think we'd have any immediate problems doing it. If we were to do it, obviously, Mark would agree to this, we would probably alternate which one of us was doing the playtesting, so that we weren't committing one person's time for a very long period of time. Yeah, we could do it. I think my preference would be perhaps to have you look at them first.
Okay.
Because while we have got a pretty good idea of having discussed them previously, it would be nice to get your feedback on it and then build from there. But then as you read one and we correct it, we can then almost immediately playtest it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Pat, are you in any position for play testing? I take it from that expression, probably not.
No, sorry, that was me. I just bit my ulcer. Yeah, no, I have to say, thank you. I have to say, yeah, I think, to be honest, I'm ready to playtest at any time. With the stuff I'm writing at the moment, it might be interesting to do a series of playtests with the same characters, investigating each kind of aspect that I'm writing about, because I'm doing the stuff about like the different aspects of society at the moment. That might be interesting, finding out how they'll work.
Yeah, that sounds good. So,
Like
what I said.
a detective agency or something, just investigating various bits, like speakeasies obviously was one of the things we were talking about, jazz, like, well, maybe not the clan, maybe we'll avoid that for now, but, you know.
Yeah, that'd be good. I mean, what I suggest you do then is just start making some notes for lots of little, maybe 1-2 week length adventures.
Yeah.
So just need to be little encounters, and it gives us a chance to test out some of the monsters and the madness mechanics as well. Jay?
Yeah, so it'd be good for that as part of that. We could also do some character creation in Lovecraft. So Pat's talking about consistent characters. If we could have our own characters doing that, I think that would work.
Have consistent characters anyway that we can maybe like put in the book afterwards as well, and then when the book's printed, oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah, but I like the idea of actually just making it lots of quite short, sharp little adventures. Maybe not more than an hour and a half, 2 hours for each little playtest. So break it up into small little bite-sized chunks, almost like the kind of small B-movie cartoon adventures you might get on the front of a 1920s movie.
Oh right, yeah, doing that sort of that serial format. Yeah, that works.
Cliffhanger.
Okay. What is this? None of us are sort of like ready immediately to do some playtesting. What I suggest is that we think about playtesting again, or try and get ready for playtesting sometime early in September, which will give everyone some time to get some stuff to do, and also with holidays and festivals and things like that, that will all be over. So it might be convenient. So that's the plan. We'll sort of resume playtesting sometime in September. Okay. Next week. Then what are we going to do next week? I have to say, one of my thoughts with 66 Magic, the book, is actually it's sort of like our fallback position. If we haven't got anything specific we want to do in brainstorming, we can always do stuff to build up 66 Magic. So that's sort of my thoughts. Has anyone got anything specific they want to brainstorm next week? Jay?
Nothing. I was just actually going to refer to your comment on 66 Magic. Have you made your mind up on whether or not you want 66 Magic to just be a set of rules, or are you looking to build a world?
I'm thinking that actually I don't want a world, a fixed world, I think, is where I'm sort of going to. I think actually a little thing where we have lots and lots of different types of magic, and we let GMs and players sort of mix and match what they want to do, and I think we'll end up with a far more interesting and varied book that way.
Okay, yeah, because I was thinking that my concern was if you just did a very generic 66 Magic book, there wouldn't necessarily be anything distinctive about it.
Yeah, that was my thinking. It would just end up with a generic fantasy world. So yeah, that was my thoughts as well.
Yeah, I have to say I really liked the ideas that we were having for this 1940s world, so I'd quite like to discuss that some more.
Okay, I mean that's something we could do. Let's take that on as our first project then. And next week we will develop those ideas a little bit further. You know, flesh out a definite sort of like timeline line for it, and then maybe we'll get on as far as coming up with some paths, or at least the feel of the type of paths we want, if not the actual fully laid out paths. So that's a plan for next week. Is we're going to do the demonology world and work on for that. Okay, so right, that's pretty much it for the brainstorming. So I'm going to pass over to Emily to take us through the pluses and deltas.
Yeah. Right, pluses and deltas time. I'll start with me. Pluses, it was nice seeing some fresh, brief faces. Lose my voice a bit today. And yeah, really enjoyed talking Magic. And yeah, it was nice to get some completely different ideas as well from everyone. Deltas, I'm just so very tired, which I think Jay will also be sharing. Pat?
Pluses, I have to say my biggest plus is I really like this idea of this kind of dark 1940s Magic world that we've just suddenly sprung up out of nowhere. That's one of the things I love. Deltas is, we did get some people, but they didn't stay very long. I don't know why. I don't know. Yeah.
I think there were some technical problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go, Mark, over to you.
Yeah, pluses. So, enjoyed thinking about Magic and seeing the whole range of interesting ideas and what you can do with that. I really like the idea of 66 Magic being a collection of different paths and ways of going about things and different rules, rather than just being the kind of straight-up fantasy world it looked like it was going to be. I think this is much more original and much more interesting, particularly the 4 sets of things we've got to look at. Deltas. Attendance. There we go. I'll go for that all 4 back.
And Jay?
Yeah, pluses, good seeing a wide range of topics turning up. It is kind of interesting. It turns out if you do just let us loose on something very wide-ranging, we will come up with a set of interesting things to talk about. I am looking forward to, say, picking one of these and really delving in a bit deeper. I think, yeah, 66 Magic shouldn't be a setting. It should be a set of rules for Magic, of lots of different types of Magic. And that will make it more interesting and set it apart. So it could very easily be a bolt-on to modern generic. It could work in a much more modular way. I like that. Deltas, yeah, technical difficulties with the new people, a little bit disappointing. They weren't able to contribute very much at all, other than asking a couple questions and then not being able to contribute. So perhaps it would be trying worthwhile getting these guys into the meeting a little earlier and sort their technical issues out.
Okay, and back to you, Chris.
Yes, my pluses. My pluses. Great to see Maud and Matthew getting into a meeting. They've both been sort of chatting and things offline or online with me for the last few days. So great to have them in. Delta, obviously, damn you, internet technology and all the rest of it. How dare you not work perfectly every time we want it to? So that's my pluses and deltas, and I think that's everyone, isn't it? So on to the sign off. Right, it's 8 o'clock, so we better be quick. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pat, Jay, Mark. Thank you also, Mark and Matthew, for your brief appearances. I look forward to seeing you in future weeks. And so we'll be back same time next week, 7 p.m. UK time on Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.